We have direct deliverables from KDHE on how and who we test. So our standard tests, we must wait at least 24 hours for onset of symptoms to ensure an accurate result. With our rapid testing, it's 48 hours recommendation before you have an accurate result. We would like to maintain the integrity and accuracy of these results, and so those are the stipulations that we are following from KDHE, since they're the ones that are giving us those supplies. I can't really speak to why potentially another testing site is operating differently, but I will say that we are maintaining the integrity of how we test and in a collaboration with KDHE and how their epidemiologists recommend us to test.
Well, it seems to me a good question for you to pose to the folks in Topeka is, why are citizens of Sedgwick County, for example, as reported on the news, walking in and having a test administered by the Sedgwick Department of Public Health? I mean, what is different between Finney County and Ford or Sedgwick County in the manner of testing?
So that's the same thing that we have posed to KDHE, and they have repeatedly told us that we are doing it in the correct manner that we should, which is testing symptomatic people. And again, it also gets into a tricky situation where people that had previously been positive may still have the viral load and still come up positive months later. And so it just muddies the water if you're not sticking with that symptomatic onset. And again, we really don't want to continually support a false sense of security, in the sense of, again, we want to ensure that accuracy of the results.
Okay. Then my final comment and a question
Sure.
is, over the course of a handful of these meetings with you here in attendance, I have posed a question, and it regards how many folks do you have a record that were infected at Walmart or at Home Depot? And each time you said, we don't have any such record, but it's not a hotspot particularly. Something along that line. Is that somewhat
Sure.
accurate?
Yes.
So if Walmart and Home Depot with fairly large crowds is not a point of great infection, then the small store, the box store, the mom and pop stores we keep talking about probably are not a source of infection either. In fact, we now have had non-essential stores open for a couple of weeks. And looking at your numbers of positives, I don't see that they've jumped because those stores are open. Would that be a somewhat accurate statement?
So evidence-wise, there is not any proof of that, but I would tell you, just like Dr. Clifford had just spoke to, is that there's a large concern that there is a population out there that is positive but may not be symptomatic.
My picture of our community is most of those infections are being transmitted in a social setting, not in the business setting. And so I pay attention to these folks who say, hey, we're going to go bankrupt if we can't open up some of these days. So that's one of the hats that the commission has to wear, is deciding when is it important to open things.
So I will say there are some businesses that have had spread between employees, but we are not actively releasing those locations as outbreak due to maintaining the integrity of those businesses who are proactively responding and mitigating that spread as quickly as possible. So there are several that we have partnered with to help mitigate that spread. And so again, this is a very complicated situation, and it's not easy.
And I'm going to help you a little bit with your explanation. Due to HIPAA and all of the great things it brings us also some grief, because we do not have an accurate and full picture of what's taking place in our community, nor can we get it. So that's not your fault, Colleen, but it makes it a little tough sitting here trying to make a judgment when we have either 2-week-old statistics or a complete lack of data. So but I appreciate your efforts. Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you.
I might point out that our businesses, for the most part, have been open for at least 10 days now, so that's kind of past history. We need to decide where we're going to move forward from here.
Mr. Chairman, if I could please, and you can put the stopwatch on. This is Lon. I have a couple of questions for Colleen. One is you were talking about testing earlier, and I was on a hospital board meeting Zoom last night, and they were talking about the tests that they do. You alluded to that, and their tests are sent to Colorado to one of their labs or hospital or something, and they said that they get the results back in 24 to 48 hours. And I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. My point is, that would just be a very small number in the total number of tests, but those results are being included in our negative or positive results. Am I correct in that understanding?
If they are a Finney County citizen, then yes, those do get reported to us.
So if it's an out-of-county person, it goes back to that home county?
Yes, sir.
As a statistic?
Yep.
Okay. And then secondly, just a couple of comments. And this is getting a little bit beyond this current pandemic. But I look at our health department as one of our mandates as a county commission is to address public health services. And I know here within the county, we have a health awareness, and we are trying to help people, employees and so forth, become healthier. I would urge the health department to become very proactive in educating our residents about being healthy with regard to their immune systems, because this is an immune system issue. If the immune system can't fight off the virus, they're going to be in the hospital, they're going to be in ICU and so forth. And there's so much out there about information, and I'm not talking about blogs and so forth. I'm talking about medical doctors and chiropractors and other professionals that talk about the vitamin issues, the hazards of prolonged wearing of masks, not necessarily temporary use of masks, but the prolonged use of masks, which is being promoted by sources outside of our control. So I would urge the health department to think of, after we get through this crisis, so to speak, of being very proactive in helping people become healthier. The other piece of it is the mental health aspect. And the statistics that I was seeing this week with regard to, not in Finney County, but in Kansas, with regard to the suicide hotline and the isolation and what that's done to seniors who have been isolated. And I have one specific example in my family of what that's done to a family member, memory-wise and so forth, on the isolation. So I would hope that our health department not only would address this particular situation, but going forward would really help our residents with education about being proactive with the immune system so we can fight off the next virus. There will be a next virus sometime. I don't know what it will be, don't know what it will be called, but this is not the only virus we will have in the next several years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Lon. I'll take that under advisement and do the best job I can.
Thank you.
Before we move forward, our Emergency Management Director, Steve Green, is in the audience. Do you have any comments you would like to put before the commission at this time, Steve? Or don't have to if you don't want to.
No, I think we're maintaining. We'll support whatever decisions made and position ourselves from there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, gentlemen. Our information gathering stage is over unless you have more questions for staff.
You need a motion? Get this off the dead center.
Let's get it off of dead center, sir.
I move that we as Finney County Board of Health recommend that we fully open the county 8th of June.
June 8th.
June 8th, that's Monday.
This is Lon. I would second that motion.
June 1st is Monday.
No,
We'll go.
June 8th is Monday.
It's a Monday.
About a week.
About a week.
Another week.
Motion is to fully reopen June 8th. To be clear, does that mean we stay in phase 1.5 until that point?
Yes, and I think it's a discretion of the business owners. If they want more safety, they can make that decision. And, we've been in sequestered for 80 days plus. And I don't think 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it's gonna make any difference. Everybody's got the message by now.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of quick comments. Ford County and Colleen was good enough to give me the accurate information, has voted to fully open effective June 15th. And Seward County Commission, just last night, voted to continue in the phases that we see on this sheet that was handed to us this morning as recommendations, not as mandates. The sense that I got from that is that, say, they're in the maximum 30 people, but somebody got to 50, if the space allowed them to distance and so forth, they're not going to, somebody's not going to cause them problems with being over the 30 people. So the two counties next to us have taken some actions in different ways.
So really, that gives us two full weekends.
Yeah.
At the current
For 1.5.
1.5.
Doctor.
So I would, Dr. Clifford, I'd just like to highlight what you're suggesting is that large entertainment venues with a capacity of 2,000, which we happen to own, fairgrounds would be allowed to open. And we would allow fairs, festivals, and parades as well with large crowds. We would allow summer camps such as the zoo camp to open. And then obviously higher ed would be at the discretion of those governing bodies. So is that what I understand, meaning full opening, no restrictions on any of those three things?
People, the organizers of those different events, it's at their discretion of how they want to organize and run their events. If people are still concerned about their health, they will stay at home. If they're not concerned, they can proceed their normal lives. But we need to quit making the decision for them.
And if I might question Commissioner Jones, so in the interim, because I was prepared to vote in a more phased open, for a more phased opening, in the interim, then bars and clubs would stay closed, and as well as public swimming pools. Is that understanding then? If we go this route?
Well,
No,
no, I would,
we wouldn't have any of those open.
I was just going to, consider just open the county on the 8th of May or June. And that would give people this coming weekend and next weekend to kind of get their businesses organized and how they want to run them.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up to what Dr. Clifford's asking. I know this information is as of yesterday, that the people with regard to the fair are already talking about alternative things with regard to having a fair, but not necessarily looking like previous fairs. So I know they're already taking some of that under advisement, whether we open or not. The second thing is I had a resident asked me yesterday, why can the Cedric County Zoo be open, but the Finney County, the Richardson Zoo is not open? So there's those questions out there. And again, I think Larry said it, in the outdoor activity, there's a lot more open space. There's a lot of ways to space. And then, yes, I would agree, the 2 weekends does allow businesses to prepare on how they're going to reopen.
I don't want to speak for either one of you, but my gist from what you're saying is businesses still have the option, venues still have the option to remain closed if they feel that is in their best interest. Is that-
Absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely.
It's all about choice, in my opinion.
Commissioner Jones?
I tend to agree. I somewhat would be agreeable to go from the phase 1.5 we're in now to the phase 4, as is highlighted here. But the only thing that Commissioner Jones's motion allows that phase 4, I'm getting the wrong phase 2, that phase 2 prevents is what's being discussed, is the large gatherings and the venues over 2,000. The only venue I can think of in our county that over this summer that's going to be a 2,000 is perhaps something involving our county fair. So I don't think there are any golf tournaments or anything. I think those all have been delayed.
Until the fall,
Until the fall, but over the summer,
question.
I don't see anything else. So I can support either direction.
Well, our last big event, Beef Empire Days, has already been canceled, both
Right.
the event and the rodeo, so,
And the pro-am.
in the program.
Yeah.
So,
We've had over a $3 million loss in revenue of events that were planned and so forth.
It just seems like we need to pick a date and say, this is what we're gonna let everybody make their own choice.
And Mr. Chairman, simplicity and certainty.
But again, and we can vote on this motion, but I wonder what, our church is going to be restricted, our venue, restaurant's going to be restricted to 15 people. We can do 30 in the interim. What happens between now and the 8th for venues?
We're still in
Still
the
1.5.
1.5.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
If you wanted to change it, raise it in the interim for a week, I'm open to amendment
Mr. Chairman, this is Dave. Commissioner Clifford's question about churches down, somebody did a nice job of thinking through the possibilities of putting this document together, and religious services are exactly what I would agree to as open but follows social distancing guidelines, so that church that holds several hundred can have more than 15 people in it because they can distance them apart. The little venue that only holds 30 people might have some difficulty socially distancing. So anyway, this document has a lot of good material on it, and I don't know who we credit. Is that Colleen or Robert, whoever drafted it?
Maggie Unruh, our communications,
Well, tell
community
Maggie
health
she did a great job.
educator.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
It was good. Yeah, it was good.
Well, again, churches, to reiterate, or just like any other thing, they do have the option.
And
It seems like for some time now to open, and most of them have decided not to.
And I can report this, Dave, again, my church, which is, I'm assuming fairly normal in its operation, is going to open for a special meeting on Friday, the 5th of June in the evening, to meet a candidate for the pastor's position. And then Sunday, following that, open, but with all kinds of guidelines. Can't use but one water fountain. There's going to be somebody standing the guard at the restroom doors. They're going to be held open so nobody touches those. Those over 65 or 70 are going to be quarantined to a separate room and so on. I mean, that church board has really been through a lot of discussion in coming up with the appropriate way to meet and do so as safely as possible. And I think that's what we're alluding to. Let folks make those decisions on their own.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to expand on that just real quickly. Our church did open and we were in the building last Sunday. And the movable chairs had been moved. We were spaced. They didn't allow more than 10 people of a family in one location. They served communion individually with gloves on. They had people opening the ushers opening the doors so no one had to touch a door. They had all these safety things involved. And then as we left there, we saw 2 or 3 other churches who had opened, obviously based on their parking lot. And I know another church, a fairly good-sized church, is planning to open this Sunday. But it's just like Bill's examples last week with regard to restaurant, and a couple of things you said, Bill, in our last meeting of where you had seen, the good practices. The churches are very aware of this and are doing good practices. And yes, they are able to open with distancing.
Mr. Chairman, one more comment, and then we will let you take a vote. We, some 2 or 3 meetings ago, adopted as a guidance document a moving, living creature that the Economic Development folks, Downtown Vision, Chamber of Commerce, and Convention and Visitors Bureau prepared in agreement with each other. And that keeps moving with the times. But if you've not had a chance to check, Lana's people, I think, are the ones involved with keeping that up to date. It's up to date. And we need to remind our folks, even though they're coming out from under the restrictions of closures and lockdowns and so on, that document still offers a whole lot of real good advice on how to open safely.
That's a very good point, Commissioner. Thank you. My comment is, I think Commissioner Larry Jones's motion, staying in phase 1.5, is a good compromise for another 8 days. It helps the community stay safe for at least another 1.8 days. But the point is, the general consensus of the emails I read this morning is we do need to open up. So I appreciate your motion. And one more comment from the...
Yeah, just Dr. Clifford, I must be the restaurant inspector because I've been out to 4 establishments since we
You don't cook at home?
partially opening up. I can't make a comment on that. I'll be in trouble at home. So the compliance is variable. So some places, great social distancing, lots of obvious hygiene opportunities, the wait staff in masks, disposable menus. Another establishment, no mask in place, tables very close together, wait staff, no masks, plastic menus being cycled to different tables. So as we go to open up, I really would encourage the public, one, to stay home if you're vulnerable, but certainly if you are opening a business, to be in absolute compliance with some of these mitigating methods, because the virus is still with us. We're not voting it away today, and we don't want to be a business that became a cluster or infected your employees. So I appreciate what I've seen around the city, and I do think our businesses are responsible, and I'm as anxious as anyone with a small business to open up. So I'm glad to see these curves bend sharply down. And I credit our health department with great work. I've visited weekly, great effort, and thank you, Colleen. But Commissioner Teresa, I'm ready to vote. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate everybody's comments. Hope the public takes them into advisement. Very good points that have been raised. To restate the motion as I understand it, we will remain in phase 1.5 until June the 8th. And upon June the 8th, then we will open the county fully with no restrictions. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion has been carried.
Mr. Chairman, one that didn't have anything to do with the voting, when he mentioned restaurants, in one restaurant that I became aware of yesterday or so, you have to have your phone with you because they've done away with their menus, and you have to scan a barcode to see the menu on your phone to order. So they've gone on above and beyond even the disposal of menus.
So if you don't have a smartphone,
So if you don't have a smartphone, you better just ask them what's on the menu, I guess.
I have one issue that needs to pertain to Finney County, probably needs to be in general session. So if we're done with this, can we move into?
I'll offer the motion, Mr. Chairman. This is Dave, that we move out of the this sequence of being the Department of, or the Board of Public Health, and that we reconvene as the Finney County Commission.
And I would second that. This is Lon.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion has carried.
Thank you, Colleen.
Thanks, Colleen.
We have unanimously expressed our opinions that business owners should have the prerogative to run their businesses as see fit. This goes to Finney County as well. I've been asked to support our administrator's position. They would like to not open fully our office buildings. Robert, would you explain that for just a little bit?
I think in keeping with your motion today is that we would go ahead and like to at least stay closed in during this time that you've chosen. One more week in essence, and open up on the 8th. We do have some things put in place, but we haven't formalized some of the other stuff. So what I'm anticipating is that we'll go ahead and remain closed for the following week to finish up formalizing the processes of in anticipation of opening up for further. As you can imagine, individuals coming in and spacing and so forth, just for the safety of our employees, that we want to make sure we have safeguards in place.
I would ask that the commission support our administrator and his position on how to reopen the Finney County buildings.
Think we're in agreement?
Consensus?
Yes, and this is not in opposition to that, but to more clearly answer the questions that I'm being asked about that. When you say the processes and so forth, are you talking about the plexiglass? Are you talking about X's on the floor? Help me understand so that I can respond to the residents who are asking me, why is the county staying closed, a little bit more specifically.
That's correct. Those items and more, we'll begin the process of staffing that desk out front so that we can try and organize individuals coming in and maintain proper spacing, particularly in a couple of offices. As you can imagine, the treasurer's office can get extremely crowded in there. We want to make sure that we continue to have that space, and we'll eventually ease that as time warrants. Just like you provided the opportunities for various businesses and organizations to do the same thing, we're practicing the exact same thing as well.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
When does the treasurer's office, that television screen column in system, when does that become operational?
From my understanding, that is an item that is, and Trista is not in the audience here, but from my understanding, that is operational now, and that will be extensively utilized during this process. And she will have a staff there at that kiosk, and that individual then will work that kiosk, and then those that will be needing to wait will ask to be waiting either outside in their car or spacing within the hallway, depending upon the load at that point in time.
All right, thanks.
One more comment. We gave the businesses the discretion to operate their business, and I don't think the county should be different. Robert's in charge, and we should give him the discretion how he wants to do this. So
Totally agree. Thank
And
you.
apparently Trista heard her name being mentioned.
That was quick.
That's the benefits of online.
Trista's
That is
coming
an
forward
online
to.
thing. I'm here to answer any questions you may have about our procedures when we do open. So we do have the Cuba software ready to go pretty much. We plan on deploying that upon opening. So that will assist with making sure we don't have the volume in our office that we usually do. We're just really concerned about our customers and our staff as well. So that's our plan.
Is that an app or is that telephone?
So we can put people, it's a digital line, so people can get online using the web through an app on their phone, or they can call our office and we can put them in line or before they come, Or they can, sorry, I just ran up here. Or we can put them in line when they come to our office. We will be asking people not to wait in our office so we don't have large crowds, and they will be called back to our office when it's their time, when they're at the front of the line.
Okay, fair enough.
Can you put all this recommendations and procedures on our website?
Sure. So we are working closely with Sarah to get not just the procedures, but also a video on how this will work once our office is open.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
All right.
great.
Sure. Thanks.
Oh, one last
sorry.
comment, Doctor.
Sure.
You can go.
Okay.
Keep that mask up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, just
Mhm.
Dr. Clifford. Since this continued closure straddles the filing deadline for precinct positions and offices, I'd just like to assure the public that they can call the county clerk's office and they will meet you and get you into the building to files. We do have a deadline on Monday at noon. If you are just putting it on my Republican Party chair, I can be contacted if folks are interested in precinct positions, or you can contact Phoenix County Democrats on the other side of the aisle. So thank you for that being said.
That's a good reminder.
All right, my tractor's calling. Meeting adjourned.
Good meeting. Thanks, Larry.
Did we,
Your son was